Match day 13 in the NWSL. Game split between Friday and Sunday. No matches on Saturday. And for the first time in the regular season, North Carolina Courage will play Portland Thorns. This game will be at Providence Park. You can watch it on CBS Sports Network. And then 4 games on Sunday, starting with San Diego Wave hosting Kansas City Current at 5 o'clock Eastern. And then OL Reign playing host to the Houston Dash right after them. 2 more games also on Sunday. It's a packed weekend in the NWSL. Welcome into HQ. I'm your host, Lisa Roman, alongside 2 former U.S. internationals, Wagner and Lindsey. A lot of games across the NWSL, a lot of them to watch. But I know you have your eye on one of them. Which is your game to watch?
I do. I mean, who doesn't love a good top of the table matchup with San Diego Wave? You know, they've been leading it as an expansion side. We've been incredibly impressed with the results they've gotten. And I think this is a really important game because they're facing off, they're hosting Kansas City, coming to their park. And the the point differential between those 2 sides is only 6. So if Kansas City can steal a road win here, that means they're down to just 1 game. And I think San Diego is also incredibly aware of the fact that Portland is hot on their heels. They have a game in hand on San Diego and only 2 points back. So getting a result in this matchup is incredibly important for San Diego. I do think they have the advantage. Kansas City, you know, they have not put together a complete performance yet this year. And you saw it just the other night where they had the 2-2 draw. They came back. They were down 2-0 against Orlando. And then they finally started playing. The last 30 minutes, they dictated tempo. They took it to the opposition. And I just think that is the learning curve that this Kansas City side is on. They've got the new manager, Matt Potter, and I spoke with him just this morning, and he said, look, we're still in the evolution of laying down some of those principles of play that we want to see on the pitch. And the reality is sometimes the players are not necessarily on it from the first whistle. And I think you can't afford to do that against the San Diego side, especially with Alex Morgan, the form that she's been in. We all aware of it, leading right now in the NWSL with goals, sitting on 12. And right behind her, funny enough to me, is that the next closest player on that roster, 2 goals. And it's Taylor Corniak. And this is a player that started to get the minutes with the U.S. national team. This is a player that is really linking up well with her. That is the key area of the field that I think Kansas City has to be aware of. Taylor Corniak's ability to flick on, to get them vertical, get them going into their attacking third very efficiently with the distribution of Kayleen Sheridan out of the back. That is the biggest weapon they have. Yes, they can control tempo, but I do think ultimately if Kansas City wants to win this game, they have to win that midfield battle. I think that is where they can have the advantage with CC Kaiser dropping down low. Perhaps they can outnumber them in those central areas with 4v3 in there. And that's where they will look to try to control the game. In my opinion, that's what I would do. And you've really got to think about the element of no Abby Dahlkemper now. Is that a blessing? Or is that not a blessing for Kansas City? I was looking at that matchup. So with Abby Dahlkemper out, she picked up the red card in that match against Chicago. You know, I think that actually could have been a beneficial area for Kansas City to utilize the 1v1 ability of a Kristen Hamilton, that pace advantage she would have had. And Elise Bennett, I mean, this player has been electric off the bench. And I think that's where Kansas City also could win the game, is with players coming in and making a difference as San Diego fatigues. Now, having said that, it's a smaller field, so I don't know that that becomes as much of an issue over the course of the 90 minutes. But I do think Elise Bennett will be a handful for that back line, especially now with Kaylee Reel coming into the mix, and the unsettledness of that center back partnership that we've seen out of San Diego with Abby Dahlkemper's injury, and now again with this red card. So I think that's an area that Kansas City will look to exploit and try to take advantage of.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting, Al, because when I was thinking about this matchup in particular, I was thinking about Dahlkemper as well, even prior to her getting the red card, in the fact that, like, when Dahlkemper plays, as good as she has been, she plays a lot of long balls. So they do play more direct, San Diego. And to your point about the midfield battle, this is where I also thought that Kansas City could take advantage of that if they could win the first and second balls, particularly with Desiree Scott sitting in with her positioning, winning the second ball, and then distributing, finding Lola Bonta, to your point, Elise Bennett higher up the field, or CC Kaiser making runs through. So it'll be interesting in terms of what does this look like for San Diego now? Do they revert back to a little bit more of that playing out of the back possession style? And then can Kansas City put higher pressure up on the ball, denying some of those entry passes? Or do they sit back, allow them to play out, and then pounce on them to open up space in behind for Elise Bennett once they do win it to be able to counterattack, or even CC Kaiser. So it'll be an interesting matchup, but I agree with you in terms of the midfield battle, in terms of Kansas City having to win that in order to get a result away from home, especially.
Yeah,
Another big
personnel
matchup
also matters because you've got Edmonds that was out, you had Alex Loera that was out, so that'll be another big question mark, I think, for Kansas City hitting the road with injuries.
Another big matchup this weekend, Houston Dash taking on OL Reign. Houston's coming off back-to-back dominant wins, 4 goals in both of their last game. They've also had a number of coach rotation in that head coaching role. This is now on their 3rd head coach, in Juan Carlos Amoros. Because of him, though, they started to score. They started to find a little bit of a rhythm. A lot of it has to do with Mexican international forward Maria Sanchez. She has been so impressive in the front line for Houston. She sends crosses in. She gets on the back shoulder. She's got her head up, loves to take on players 1v1. But defensively, Houston has conceded 4 in their last 5 games. So they need to lock it down, especially against a team like OL Reign. OL Reign coming off of a 3-2 win against Angel City, and they outshot Angel City 25-9 in that match. All of those goals incredibly dominant coming in the second half late in that game. So the battle between these two sides is going to come down to the Houston defense. If they can tighten it up a little bit against OL Reign's lethal frontline attack. But these teams across the NWSL, they're starting to play each other for a second time, and the pressure is on to rack up points as they end the second half of the season. And it comes down to certain personnel, especially for San Diego Wave FC. They've been sitting at the top of the standings since the start of the season. A couple new faces, some familiar faces, but without Abby Dahlkemper this week for San Diego Wave. Allie, which players need to step up for Casey Stoney's side?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Jayden Shaw. I think this is a young player. If she gets time, I think this is an intriguing prospect. She's 17 years old. She subbed into the match, or started the match, after only 2 days of training with this group. And she looked the part. This is incredible, I think, to have the composure and the poise. You saw it there. That first touch, so many players would shoot that ball initially. They don't. She was wise in her decision, calm. She slides it past the defender, and now she's got an open net that she's shooting at. I mean, and it wasn't just that play that impressed me. This is a player that has all the tools. She can pick a pass. She set up Corniak on occasion. She set up Alex Morgan. This is a player that can eliminate defenders 1v1. So when you talk about, Lisa, that these teams start to know each other as they're hitting that second matchup, well, guess what? Kansas City has not seen Jayden Shaw yet, and this is going to be a new element. I just think it speaks volumes. Yes, players are returning from international duty, but it speaks volumes that this kid at 17 years old, and I'm calling her a kid because it's a very fast, steep learning curve. When you step out on that pitch, she was only in training for 2 days and got the nod from a very experienced manager in Casey Stoney. That tells you all you need to know about the talent level of this young woman.
Yeah, the player for me to watch is Portland Thorns' Yasmine Ryan. This is a Portland team that has shifted formations. It started in a 3-back and now have gone to a 4-back. Now that players are starting to come back from international duty, we'll see if they revert back and get more into that expansive shape with wingbacks. But Yasmine Ryan has been a difference maker. And one thing that we've known about this Portland Thorns team is under Ryn Wilkinson, these players know exactly what their role is. So whether they started a lot or played a lot of minutes, they're coming in and making an impact regardless of who's on the field. Yasmine Ryan, her ability to score goals, we see it late in this game against Angel City to get the point in early July, but also just her ability to play out wide or up top. I think she complements, as we saw this past weekend against Louisville, Sophia Smith, her ability to attract players to her, to run it back lines, to score goals, but also just help play make. This is a player that can also play the final pass, which is going to be incredibly useful as the run for the Thorns into the playoffs with just the finest margins. Portland Thorns only 1 point behind San Diego Wave, and that's why my matchup this weekend is Portland Thorns versus North Carolina. This will be an interesting one because North Carolina, bottom of the table, but when you look at maybe potentially Caroline and Dabinia coming back into the mix, we will see how they look, because this is a team that can perform. They won the Challenge Cup earlier this year, just haven't had the consistency in this regular season, whether it's been COVID protocols or dropping points late in games and getting the results they need. But when you're in a playoff race late in this season, these matchups look very different. But I give this nod to Portland Thorns for the reasons that I talked about, with the principles, understanding what's at play regardless of who's playing. But you get Sam Coffey back in the mix, you get Sophia Smith that's hot throughout, whether it's with the national team or with the Portland Thorns. And then you have, as I mentioned, Yasmine Ryan playing in the wide role, drawing so much attention to her. You have a number of players that can step up in these roles and make a difference, that give them a different look regardless of what formation they're playing. So nod to Portland Thorns, yet I think it could be a lot tighter than the standing show with these two teams.
Between the match, OL Reign and Houston Dash, my eyes have to be on Houston Dash forward Ebony Salmon. She's a player that traded into Houston at the end of June, and after not getting a lot of time at Racing Louisville, now she's finding her footing with the Houston attack. She's got 4 goals in 2 games for the Dash. She's finding that rhythm alongside Maria Sanchez, Nichelle Prince, Shea Groom, and Salmon's a player that can get on a back shoulder, take a few touches. You see her get in behind, go 1v1 with the goalkeeper. She's got great vision. She's got a great understanding of how to shoot the ball. And now it's getting her confidence up. In this match against OL Reign, it's going to be really important for Salmon to find the ball at her feet and take defenders on 1v1. When she gets the support from Groom, Sophie Schmidt underneath her, combined with those players, look to get the ball back and receive the crosses from Maria Sanchez coming in from those wide areas. But across the board, we've got Jayden Shaw, we've got Yasmine Ryan, and Ebony Salmon, who are just 3 of the many players to keep an eye on this weekend. Allie, Lori, thank you both so much for breaking down the games to watch and who you can watch this weekend. You can catch more on the NWSL from the Attacking Third podcast. Download, follow, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.